Hi, I'm Daniel Burkholder, and welcome to Act React, a podcast exploring improvisation through conversations with remarkable artists. Today marks the beginning of a new season of a bunch of conversations that I'm really excited to bring to you. Starting off today with Ruth Zaporah, who I'll introduce in a moment. One thing about this new season is that in addition to this podcast, we have started a YouTube channel. So because, Zoom and video conferencing is so common now, it's the way we do the interviews and record the interviews. So it's really easy to have the videos ready to just post. So I'm really excited to add this layer, the offering video, so you can see us having our conversations in real time. So please check that out if you'd like. Otherwise, this podcast will carry all the same material. Today, I have the privilege of bringing you this conversation with Ruth Zaporah. I'm sure many of you know who she is, have studied her work, or had the pleasure of seeing her perform. I remember I got to see her perform many years ago, I could say decades ago, when I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area. I saw her at a performance space called The Marsh. I don't even know if it still is there. I would be impressed if it is, with all the crunch of space that has happening in San Francisco. But the performance was really a remarkable demonstration of the depth and breadth of her abilities as an improviser. It really has stayed with me all these years later. So I was really excited to be able to talk with her. I've studied her work with other people and through some of her writings, so I was a little bit familiar with action theater, but it was great to kind of get in there and have this conversation with her. So I'm going to just read a little excerpts of her bio, and then we'll jump into the conversation. So, called by the New York Times an improviser truly living the moment, Ruth Zaporah has been creating, honing, and teaching her art of improvisation for over 5 decades. She is the creator of a unique improvisational physical theater method called action theater, which is now practiced and taught by students all over the world. From the start of her experimental classes and performances in Berkeley, California in the 1970s, to the inception and development of action theater as an art form, through the elegant distillations of her work in recent decades, Ruth's career and legacy mark her as one of the foremost theater pioneers of her generation. Ruth is the author of several books on action theater, has received choreography grants, as well as numerous tributes and honors throughout her career. And she currently lives in Santa Fe, Mexico. That doesn't even really begin to touch on her work, as you'll, I'm sure, see as we go into this conversation. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Ruth Zaporah. Welcome, Ruth, and thank you so much for joining me on the Act React podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me this morning.
What do you call this? What do you call it?
It is Act React podcast.
ACT? R-E-A-C-T.
ACT/RE/act. So Act React.
That's great.
Yeah.
Light off.
Okay.
Is that all right without that light?
It's a little dark, but if it's more comfortable for you, it's fine.
Let me do this.
Okay.
Okay. That should be a little better.
Awesome. Yeah, that's better. That's wonderful. Yeah.
Kind of ghostly before. All right.
I was reading or rereading the Improvisation on the Edge and kind of going through some of those essays and stuff like that. And actually, in relationship to the title of this podcast, Act React, there was one little quote that jumped out at me, of course, and it was, "I react instead of imagine."
Really? I said that?
Yeah, you did. Well, you wrote it down.
Okay. This is so wrong.
Tell me why that is so wrong.
What the context was where that appeared. Because one of the major components of the practice is to not react, but to imagine. Because reacting it usually has to do with a non-thought out response. It's just like you touch something hot, you moved your hand away, or you see somebody who looks scary and you go the other way. It's an emotional reaction. And improvisation has no room for that. At least the kind of improvisation that I do.
Sure.
So, yeah. So anyway, What page? You have to let me know
Okay.
what page that
Okay.
was.
I'll have to find. I don't know if I can find it right this second. I should have
Okay, no,
marked it, but
you don't need to look now, but when
I
you
will.
find it, I'm
Yeah.
curious what the context was.
I'll let you know, definitely.
Okay.
So what is it? So then what is imagination? How do you practice that, or how do you engage that in your practice? What does that mean for you?
Well, I never go at it directly, but when you're in an embodied practice, the body is giving you so much information that, that's not anything that you can react to. Oh, that feels good. That feels bad. Oh, that puts me in a bad mood, or that makes me happy. We don't deal with emotional stuff at all in this practice, at least at the skillful level. The
Hmm.
beginning level, that's unfortunately what it's all about. Um, and so, the body has a language of its own that is indecipherable. And when that connects with images, then the imagination triggers. How that works neurologically, I don't know. I would love to know how that
Yeah.
all works. But uh, a reaction is predictable. We like something, we don't like something, we want something, we don't want something, we're afraid of something, we're brave, we're not afraid of anything. That whole inner dialogue is not relevant to improvisation because we're creating sort of dream worlds in
Hmm.
this practice. And you've probably seen some, maybe Cassie, you've seen her do performances. I mean, there's nothing emotional going on there, although audience members might, because our culture doesn't give us access, doesn't give us literary or social access to another intelligence that we have. Okay, and so
Right.
if anybody puts the slightest expression on their face, we call that an emotion.
Hmm.
But
Right.
emotions, if you can name what you're experiencing, that would usually fall into an emotional category. If you can't name it, then it's dreamland.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, and that's imaginal.
Yeah. I'm wondering, like the thing as you say that, I'm wondering how much emotions are kind of socially, culturally constructed for
I,
us.
I do believe that they are, Daniel, because there are different cultures that don't have the same emotions that the Western cultures have.
Yeah.
Tribal cultures, or some island cultures, or some Asian cultures. I mean, and then there's like sadness, and there's grief, and there's joy, and there's things that everybody shares.
Yeah.
But that's not going to get you on a psychiatrist's bench or bed or whatever they do. I've never done therapy, so I don't know. I don't want anybody messing with my mind.
I've done some therapy, and most I just sit in a chair, you know. um that's wonderful. I wonder if that kind of, I don't know if there's a bridge here, because one of the other things that struck me as I was kind of going through the book again is thinking about meditation and Zen practice, and it seems how much that has informed or brought information into your improvisational practice. So I wonder if you can just speak to that a little bit.
Uh, I I was in dancing school from the age of 3 and Hebrew school from the age of 6, I think. And so, Hebrew school in those days uh, was quite limited. You didn't really get any philosophic information. I was taught to read and write Hebrew, and I was taught the biblical stories. But every time I ask a question that was of interest to me, I was told, well, you have to go to rabbinical school for that, which women weren't allowed to do anyway. So I would ask my father all these questions, and he didn't know. I mean, but he gave me when I was 17, and I don't know why. I mean, it was shocking when I look back on it. How would he even know about this? He gave me autobiography of a yogi to read, and that changed my life at 17. And so then I started seeking those kinds of answers about who am I? What am I supposed to be doing here? What's this all about? Is that real? Is everything that I see real? I mean, and then we get back to the imagination again. And so that's what triggered my interest, and for many years, devotion, not anymore, but for many years, pretty solid practice and visiting all kinds of um, teachers and people leading. Mostly it was Zen practice because it seemed to have less it was more rigorous. And being a dance person, I was
Yeah.
always and continue to be. Rigor was what I was interested in.
Yeah.
Rather than kind of softer approaches.
Yeah. When I was in high school, I just went to a public high school outside Detroit. And in our English department, we had a class called Zen and Emerson. So this was in the 80s, in the early 80s, and it tied together, it related kind of the transcendental writers of America
Yeah.
with a lot of the Zen practice and stuff like that. And so really since high school, I have kind of come in and out of meditation practice and Zen. And I also kind of did the Tibetan thing for a little bit and stuff like that. And so kind of meditation, mindfulness, all that stuff is a place that I've really connected. Also that practice of improvisation and kind of that meditative kind of state. Definitely. And it's interesting because I have another quote that this is the last quote, I promise. So you don't have to like, and you were talking about Zen and meditation and improvisation. You said both practices have changed from being something I do to being something I am wherever I am. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like maybe you don't have a kind of formal meditation practice anymore. And
not formal.
Yeah,
not formal, where you've got the whole tanka and you've got the candle and the incense and you're sitting there. No, I don't do that anymore. Maybe upon occasion, but very rarely. That's not what the practice is about in the long run. I don't think it's about how you view the world, how you view your life, how you view your very existence, how you view your reactions to things, or are they responses to things? They're two quite different things. So it's like it's a minute. It's always present.
Right.
I don't have to sit in front of a candle in order to find it.
Yeah.
And it certainly affected the action theater practice in a huge way. I mean, not only for me, but it's the language that I use a lot when I'm teaching as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe that's a good, so today, right now in your life, what is interesting about improvisation? What are you kind of interested in, exploring, working on, working with?
I can't really separate it from my life to look at it objectively.
Yeah.
From the moment I take the first awakened breath in the morning to the moment I close the eyes and I'm in a dream world or wherever I am, I don't know where you go at night. Just how I pick up the glass of water. I'm aware of how I'm picking up the glass of water, whereas most of us just pick up a glass of water because we're thirsty. We're not paying attention to the lips on the glass. It's not an embodied experience. We're in our heads a lot, functioning, very functional culture we live in. And so with enough practice, I mean, there was a group that was just here, Cassie's group, who Cassie's in the group, and Shinichi and a whole bunch of people. And the whole, 5 of them stayed at my house. A bunch of them stayed nearby. We were in the yurt every day. I have a dance studio in the backfield. We were improvising the whole time, even while we were cooking. I mean, it's a different way of angling into awareness and perception.
Yeah. That's lovely.
Because training for years, I started dancing when I was 3 years old, training for years of being in your body. I mean, the body, it has a life of its own, and you're kind of partnering with it all the time. And so that is so ingrained in my very being, even my family, we would dance at night. My dad would play the piano. My mom would sing and dance. My brother would play. I mean, I was very fortunate to have a family that offered me at even a young age alternatives to reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's interesting because just thinking about how much our family kind of gives us permission in a way. And, I talk about being a male dancer. I started when I was 9 years old, taking dance classes. And
I didn't know that about you.
Yes, that's what I do. That's the main thing I focus on in my life is dancing. And my dad and my mom were amateur ballroom dancers, competitors. And my dad's dad, both his parents were avid square dancers. So I talk about this lineage of, I come from a lineage of men who danced, who enjoyed dancing. I mean, neither of them.
That would be your book title.
Yeah.
Dance.
Yeah, completely. So it's like there was a permission, and like there was never any question whether it was something I should be doing or should not be doing, you know, even though I was doing a different kind of dance than they do, not social dances, but, you know, theatrical dance or what have you. And so I think there is something real truth about that of when our families offer us permission. It's
Yeah,
kind
I
of a
think
lovely
it even
thing.
goes back beyond our families because they got it from somewhere.
Yeah.
So I think it's genes, you know, it's just like you have black hair, you dance, or you know what I mean? It's like
Right.
what you're come into the world with. My dad would take movies, even back in, I'm 85, so I'm talking about movies when
Yeah.
I wasn't even walking yet. He had this little movie camera, and there's one clip where I'm sitting on one of my grandmother's lap, and there's music going on, and I can't walk yet, but I'm like dancing, and they think it's wonderful, and you know all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
born with it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
With
we're
that.
born with it, right?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't have a
It
choice.
definitely feels that way.
Yeah.
So you're talking earlier just with Cass and the group who was there and that awareness, and how does, and I know a lot of what you've done is teach others to kind of explore improvisation. How do you start, say, with a group of people who haven't been training their whole lives
I
in
don't.
embodied
I
practice? You
don't.
don't. You don't.
No.
You don't.
I mean, when I was, you know, I raised 4 kids mostly alone, and
Yeah.
then I would take anybody, you know, because I
Yeah.
was trying to earn a living.
Yeah.
But no, for the past 10 years, no, they have to come in with skill. I just don't have I mean, there are lots of other action theater teachers that
Yeah.
happily take beginning people.
Sure. Sure.
But
Sure.
I just, I don't want to do that.
I guess.
Especially here in Santa Fe, it's really hard because um, I've been here for 22 years, and there's not, in the dance and theater world, there's not a whole lot of emphasis on discipline and learning and skill development. It's more about expressing yourself.
Yeah.
That's not where it's at for me.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe in a zoom out a little bit, and maybe not thinking about just working with, say, beginners in the form or something, but in general, like what are the kinds of things that are important of developing an improvisational performer that you're interested
Well,
in?
because of the kind of improvisation that I do, that the first
Yeah.
skill is to be listening to the language of the body.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. So there are lots of exercises that direct a mind to that as content.
Yeah.
So that would be the beginning. I mean, you know, there are total loads of exercises for that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And then of course beginners are still thinking their way through it, and you know we talk about that. But eventually
Yeah.
they realize that that's just a block that you know they want to name. People want to name what they're experiencing rather than experiencing it without a name.
Yeah.
It's just it's I don't know how I don't even know the word for that. It's a climate, right? It would
Yeah.
be a climate, and so that takes a neurological shift in the brain, and that takes time
Yeah.
to build these other kinds of pathways. So, but right now, you know, I just don't have the patience for it.
Sure, of course, that's totally understandable. Totally
Yeah,
understandable.
right.
Yeah, I teach at a university. I'm for the first time I'm teaching a beginning modern dance class to non-majors. So it'll be many people who've actually never even been in a dance studio before and understand that. So I'm kind of at the other end of gearing up to get ready for all of that.
My first job, it
Yeah.
was one of my first jobs. I was teaching dance, the same thing. I was teaching dance at Goucher College.
Oh.
In Baltimore. And then I got this job at Towson State College, teaching in the theater department. And so I thought I was going to go in and give them a dance class. But they came in fully dressed. Maybe your students did too.
Yeah.
With shoes and socks, fully dressed, you know, bodies that probably have not even done one push up or anything. And so I freaked out and I said, what do you want from this course? and they said, we want to embody our characters. I had no idea what embody meant.
Uh-huh.
No idea what that word meant. And I had of course, no idea what a character was, you know. And so out of frustration, I said, okay, we'll walk. Just let's start walking. And then that did it for me, because in dance class, as you must know, everybody's taught to walk the exact same way,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Here, everybody's walking different ways, and that is what triggered it. I never went back. That's what brought me into improvisation. I thought that was so much more interesting.
Yeah.
For people to be with the, you know, work with the tools you got, not
Right.
the tools you want to have, but the tools you have. So yeah.
That's really, actually, I love that, work with the tools that you have.
Yeah.
That's lovely to think about. So thinking about kind of improvisational performance and stuff like that, kind of like what continues to draw you to exploring, to improvising in front of people? I mean, obviously over the last couple years, that's been hard to do, but in general, that act of getting up in front of people, without, I mean, I guess that's a question, like, how much do you know before you step on stage?
Zero.
Zero.
Yeah.
You know
So,
the stage. You know the stage,
I mean, I know the
basically.
stage. I know what the
Yeah.
lighting's going to be. I know
Yeah.
what the theater is going to be like.
Yeah.
I know whether people are going to be close or far. You know, I know
Right.
all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But no, I have not a clue.
Yeah.
Not a clue what's going to happen. That's why I do it.
Can you say more about
Yeah,
that? I
and
also love that.
because I go into this altered state, and you can't predict the content of an altered state when you're in an unaltered state. That's not going to happen. So no, right away. I mean, I've been doing this for so long
Yeah.
that, you know, I mean, I started performing at Miss Pim's ballet school when I was 6 years old,
Right.
and so yeah, I, no, there's no thought that I mean, the no thought thing prior to a performance probably kicked in maybe 30 years ago, 25 to 30 years ago.
Okay.
And it has to do with the meditation practice. You know, your mind is quiet. I'm not worried. I know I can, even if I'm not in the mood, I can still pull off a decent show.
Mm-hmm.
So I have that confidence.
Yeah.
Even though afterwards I know that I was working it. You know, but
Right.
at this point in my life, that's not going to happen anymore. I would quit if that happened, because it's painful.
Uh-huh.
Right? It's not fun. It's painful.
Right.
No, I want to get on the magic carpet and being taken somewhere, you know.
Right.
No pain, just like dreamland. That's the whole obsession. That's why people get obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Because you're finally free of yourself and everything and whoever you think you are and whatever you think you like and don't like and are good at and not good at. No, you're totally free of that, and you're just being taken. You're being taken, and you're allowing yourself to be taken.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard for a Westerner.
Yeah. What do you think allows someone to reach that point where they can feel that, where they can experience that, where they can do it consistently?
I think consistency is the word, and passion and great desire, because it's not easy. Sometimes it's like you're burning in hell. It is so humiliating and so devastating, and there's so much shame and embarrassment, and you know that but the other is, but you know, there's this light out there. You know, it's like your meditation practice in the beginning. All it is give me aspirin, give me Tylenol. I mean, this really hurts, and my mind keeps. It's the same as meditation, and then eventually, you don't even have to sit down on a cushion anymore.
Right. Yeah. You know, when I'm working with teaching improvisation, or working with a group of students or with a group of other professionals, and we're kind of preparing for a performance, and I think about this, like when I was in grad school around 2000, 2001, and an independent study course that I did was to take your action theater book with a group of friends, and we went through the whole series of exercises. The first book, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that must have been fun.
Yeah, it was great. It was so great, and I think from that, partly from that, I definitely thought about like, oh, how do we continue to break down all of these elements so that we can pull them apart? So then later we don't have to think about them. We just know them, you
Perfect.
know, or they're available, you know, like thinking about space and rhythm and timing and relationships and
Yeah.
like all that stuff, like taking the time to like differentiate all those parts to then
Right.
hopefully it integrates back together. And I always think of this as it's like an arc of maturation. And because I think about like, I'm also a Feldenkrais practitioner, so I think thinking about like, you know, infant development and how they learn how to move is like they have to learn all the different parts of their body over time, and then they can put it back together and move more with more coordination. And I also think that this training of improvisation is like that. It's like we need to like tease it all apart.
That's right. When I was at some point, I was living in Berkeley. I mean, I lived in Berkeley for 30 years, and I opened a studio with Al Wonder. Do you know who Al?
No, I don't know.
He lives in Australia now, and he was with Alan Nicolai's company.
Okay.
And he
Sure.
moved to California, and a woman named Terry Sengraf. I'm not sure what state she was from, but she was the first person that brought trapezes into
Yes.
a dance studio.
Yes. Yes.
So the three of us opened a studio.
Wow.
Why am I telling you? Something you said. Oh, darn. Sorry. Erase
That's okay.
that.
That's all right. Erased.
This is what happens when you get old. You start with this great idea, but then you never get to the finish line.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah, well, Cassie is like really on my back with this to write a third book, because the book that you're referring to is like a beginner's book. These are the introductory, and then there's a second book called the Manual. It's not a book; it's a workbook, and so it's all exercises, and it's mostly about, a lot of it leans on narrative, especially for dance people. That's really hard.
Yes.
Really hard to talk.
Yeah.
It was really hard for me, and thank goodness for Bobby Ernst, really hard for me. And I couldn't sing either. And thank you, Rhiannon, because we would just have studio dates in the Bay Area. It was a vibrant, incredible. We got money just to go and practice in the studio. We got money. So so the second book leans on narrative more as far as exercises.
Yeah.
And then this next book that I'm starting to accumulate ideas is more basic. It's about the eye. What role do the eyes play in it? Because most people just look forward, like I'm just looking at you.
Yeah.
But when you're in an improvisation or you're telling somebody a story, like I'm demonstrating it to you right now, of when I was walking through the forest, there were too many trees. I felt so claustrophobic. By activating my eyes, I'm in the experience. Otherwise, I'm out of it telling it to you. That is so hard to teach people to do.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And then so we've got the eyes, and what happens inside of a pause. A pause has two functions. One function of the pause is it defines the rhythm of the actions. They're phrases, pauses, phrases, pauses. Phrases can be short, long, whatever. And then there's a pause. Or if you're working with a partner, you do something, you pause, and then you're experiencing your partner. What is your information that you're delivering? A pause is not a stop. The improvisation is continuing in the pause. It's just that you're not moving your bones. But the eyes and the flesh of the face and the tension of the body manifest how you're experiencing either what the partner's doing, or you've ended a phrase and then something new is coming in that pause, and then that takes you into another phrase. So the pauses are very full of content. But most of the time, in most forms, they're not. They're just freezes. So it's that very internal, very basic stuff that this next book is about.
Yeah, I mean, you say it's very basic, but it's continue on. It feels like you need to be at a certain level to be able to comprehend even those things that seem simple, but there's so many skills that need to be there before you can actually embody a pause, for example.
And I've been reading lately a book called The Aesthetic Brain, written by a neuro person. And our brains are wired for beauty and order. And so that there, definitely beauty, but it's not beauty in the pretty sense.
Yeah.
It's beauty like a sunset or like a tree that's got some greatness to it, or a human being, whatever. We're wired for that. And so the reason why I started investigating it is because I see with my students where if their thoughts get too much in the way, the thing's not going to work. You have to let the thing tell you what it wants, and then it connects to our neurological makeup. But that's probably the final stage of mastery of any art form. The final stage. Did you see that Jackson Pollock film?
Which one?
What's the actor's name?
The like the biopic one.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
There's one scene where the painting's on the ground and he's like splashing paint, and it's all a dance.
Right.
And that is if I could find that film or even remember the name of it, I could probably look it up. That would be a great thing to show students, that he steps back and he sees the painting, and the painting tells him what to do and how to, respond. He steps back. He's constantly obeying orders given by the work itself. And he has the skills to do it.
Right.
He doesn't even have to think about skills. At some point, you don't think about skills because the show is telling you what you need to do.
Yeah.
And you have the skills to manifest it.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Great talking to you. It's my favorite subject.
Well, again, I don't want to keep you too long, but I really appreciate you taking the time and just sharing some thoughts about improvisation and your practices and all that kind of stuff. It's definitely an honor to include you as part of this podcast in this.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
I like it. I like these interviews because I hear myself say things that surprise even me.
Yeah. Stuff you need to add into the next book, right?
Maybe so.
All right. Well, Ruth, thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks again.
You too, Daniel. You're doing great work. I appreciate you, really.
Oh, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, thank you so much for listening to my conversation with Ruth Zaporah. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Please check out the links below so you can find out more of what she's doing out in the world these days. Next week, I will release the next conversation with my friend and colleague, Nicole Bindler. It is a wide-ranging conversation about improvisation, politics, somatics. We touch on many, many subjects. And as I posted online recently, like whenever I have a conversation with Nicole, I always feel like I leave it a little bit smarter. And I'm sure you will too. So please join us next week for that conversation. And until then, live spontaneously. Take care.